So we were talking about dependency injection, and we saw how the container provides this dependency injection service to the beans. Also, we saw a couple of annotations to configure the beans. What are those annotations? Can you people tell me?
Component qualifier.
Component is a qualifier we didn't saw. Component, and also component fine, but there is another annotation. Repository, yes, to configure the bean. Repository and not auto-wide. Auto-wide is used as the JV as the container to inject the dependency.
Configuration.
Not configuration. Service. Yes, that's right. Com Apart from component annotation, we have annotations like repository, service annotations to configure the beans. Okay. Yes. So when we will when all right, sorry, what type of beans you'll configure using repository? What type of beans you'll configure using repository? Just a minute, please. I'm sorry. Just a minute. Which beans we configure using repository. So the beans, um, which are responsible for interacting with the data source. Okay. Yeah. Which contains data access code, I can say. The beans which contain data access code. Such beans you'll configure them using repository annotation. Okay. Yeah. So next, service beans. Service beans basically the beans which contain the business logic. Okay. Yeah. And some functionality. Such beans are configured using service beans. Okay. Fine. So next, today, I'm sorry, I'm going to show you people how to configure the beans using XML also. Okay. How to configure the beans using XML. XML based configurations, how they look like. Let's see. So you should be aware of it because if you put into any project, let's say there is a migration project from or a legacy project, which is using previous versions of Spring, where the beans are configured using XML. You need to understand them, right? Yeah. So let's make ourselves comfortable with XML based configurations also. So here you see in this configuration file, we got this XML element called as component scan. So what this XML element does, component scan, this component scan element, it instructs the container to look for the beans in that package. It instructs the container to look for the beans in that package. That is what it does. So, and the container will scan for the beans based on that annotations which you got. Okay, yes, fine. Now, let's configure the beans here in this XML file. I will comment this component scan. Now we don't need it. Okay, and also what I will do is here I will comment that annotations also which we have used. Now you can check this. Here you see, we didn't configure the beans using annotations. We just removed them. I guess there is one more. Yeah. Now, how to configure the beans in this XML file? So let's say I want to configure that product repository bean. So use bean element for that purpose. We got bean element. Use bean element for that purpose. you know, we have to specify the class name. So we have a class attribute, class equal to. We have content assist. We can make use of it. You see, I'll type in the initial letters of the bean class name, and then I'll press Control space. So it will show you the list of classes whose name starts with PRP, PROD, prod. You see, I'll select this product repository. Yes, and you will let's configure an ID for that bean product repository. Yes, and yes, let's go to this product repository once. Have you noticed it? The product repository, it needs this product DB store. It's a dependency. Okay, it's a dependency. I can say. You know, here, make sure that you add a setter method for this property. Whenever you're configuring the beans using XML, okay, yes. Here, make sure that for this property, which represents the dependencies, use setter method. Add setter method. Okay, add a setter method. Add a setter method. Please make sure that your mics are muted, all of you. Please do that. So now the property, what is it? Product DB store. It represents a dependency, right? The product repository bean needs DB store. So it needs that reference, right? In order to use that dependency, it needs a reference. We have to configure that bean. Let's ask the container to inject that product DB store. So first we have to configure that product DB store bean. Yeah, class. It is also a bean, right? Product DB store. You see, ID equal to product DB store. Yes. Now you see this is one bean, and this bean has got no dependencies. Now we have this bean, product repository bean. Here it needs a dependency which is configured as a property in the product repository class. You see, what is the property name? Product DB store. Yes, you see I'm using the property name here. Property name equal to product DB store. So this name is the name of the property or the variable which you got in the product DB store. It's the name of the property or variable which you got in the product DB store, I can say. Okay, yes. So we want the container to inject that product DB store bean. On top you have this bean, right? I want the container to inject this bean. So how do I specify those details? You see, you'll find that here. We'll use reference attribute, reference, and this reference attribute should be referring to the ID of the bean which you want the container to inject. What is it? Product DB store. Product DB store. That's it. Okay. Now here we got that bean whose ID is product DB store. Yes. So this is how you will wire the beans. You'll, okay. We call it as bean wiring. So we are associating the beans now. So we are asking the container to supply that product DB store bean reference or inject that product DB store bean into this product repository. So these two bean configurations, are they clear for you people, all of you? Yes? Anyone got any questions first of all? Let me know. If it is clear, then we'll move on. Yes? So we have configured two beans. One is product DB store and the other one is product repository. and we are asking the container to supply the product DB store or inject the product DB store bean into product repository. That's it. So, so people who have just joined, for your information, this is XML based configurations. In the last class, we saw annotations based configurations. Now we are going through XML based configurations. Okay, yeah, this is how you'll configure the beans using XML. Yes. So now we have other beans also. Let's configure them. Now we have product repository bean, product repository heap bean. See, product. Sorry. First, let me define the class name. Product repository heap, and the ID is equal to product repository heap and the property. So make sure that so this is the bean class. Make sure that for this property product to be stored, you have a setter method. Definitely for the property which represents the dependency, add a setter method. In case of XML based configurations, you need it. Okay. In case of XML based configurations, you need a setter method. Yes. Uh, set the DB store. It's taking time. See, product DB store. So now it's a dependency. Again, let's ask the container to inject the product DB store. That means now the product DB store is injected into both the beans. Okay. Yes. Both the beans need access to the data source, right? So we just injected it. Yes. This way, a bean can be injected into several beans. That is possible. Okay. Yes. Next, we have product service bean. Bean class product service ID equal to product service. Let's have a look at this product service bean class. So product service bean also needs a dependency. What is it? Product repository is a dependency here. Product repository is a dependency. So here make sure that for this property product repository you got a setter method. For XML based configurations you need it. You see, I got a setter method for that product repository. Next, property name product repository. Okay, now we have how many beans of type product repository here? We have two product repository beans, right? One is product repository heap, the other one is product repository, just product repository. We have two beans. Now, let's say if I want the container to inject this product repository hip bean into this product service bean. So how do we ask the container to do that? Yes, you got the question right. How do we ask the container to inject product repository hip bean into this product the service bean? Yeah. So how you will give that ID? Yes, use reference attribute. That's right. So ref equal to, we have content assist here also. Product repository hip, let's say. That's it. That means now here we are not using this product repository bean, though it is configured, but we are not using it here in this application. So this way you can configure the beans using XML. Okay. Yeah. And so already you see when we load the container, we are passing that Spring Bean configuration file name. Now this time the container will load that beans from the configuration file from the XML configuration. It's called as a bean configuration file, Spring Bean configuration file. So let's run this code. We'll test it. Okay, you see, it works. Is it clear for you people, all of you? Okay. Now, for suppose here, if I want this product service to use product repository bean, this bean, you know what to do now, right? So what you'll do, what changes we need to do here? Yes. Yeah. Just change this reference attribute value to product repository. That's it. Now you see how easy it is to change the dependencies, right? So we can easily switch the dependencies because these beans are loosely coupled. That's the reason why this is possible here. Okay. Now you people saw XML based configurations and you saw annotations based configurations. So what do you people think? Which one is better? Is XML based configurations better or annotations configurations are better? Which one would you prefer? So annotations. Okay, I'm sorry. Why annotations based configurations? You may have a reason for that, right? Container will take care of this. Okay. Here also, here also we can just leave that dependency configurations, especially to the container, if possible. Yeah, we can do that. Okay. I can say that each one of this approach has got its own advantages and disadvantages. So, for example, if you consider XML based configurations, I can say that it is little hard to configure this XML based configurations, right? Yeah. You see a lot of extra configurations here. I mean, we need to deal with XML stuff, but though we have the support of the tools, so even for the framework, you see, now it has to process this XML data. Yes, it needs to process this XML data, right? Here, additionally, processing of XML elements, it's one of the overhead for the framework now, for the application, I think, I'm sorry. So next thing, these are the two disadvantages. First of all, now we need to handle XML based configurations. It looks little complicated compared to annotations. Next, when we talk about XML based configurations, one more thing, additional processing, or there is a overhead of processing this XML elements, okay, which is a little complicated, or you can consider it as an overhead compared to the annotations based configurations. Okay, yes, fine. Next, you know, but there is an advantage for XML based configurations also. So, what is the advantage of using XML based configurations? You see, these configurations are centralized. The XML based configurations, basically you'll find that they're centralized. Centralized configurations. So that means easy to manage the configurations because they are all at one place, right? So all the bean configurations are at one place. Yes, no need to touch that source code. And you see, if you make any changes to this XML file, you don't have to rebuild the application because we didn't change any code, right? So no need of compilations and all such things. Just simply reload the application. This new changes will be loaded by the application. That's it. So that is one of the advantages of using, um, you know, XML based configurations. Yes, right. Hope you people got it. Centralized configurations, and it's easy to make changes. Is it clear, all of you? Can we have multiple bean references for one bean? Multiple bean references means, I'm sorry, I didn't get you.
Like here, product service has one bin reference, like product repository, right?
You mean to
So
say, yeah, I got you. I mean, you mean to say multiple dependencies. For each dependency, you'll have a property here. The property, what it does, it actually indicates a dependency. You got the point?
yes, Mahesh.
You got the point? So each property represents a dependency.
Yeah, I got it, Mahesh.
Now, yeah, you can have multiple dependencies. That's very common. In fact, for a bean, you'll have many dependencies, and for each dependency, you'll have a property element here. Yes, got it. Still, anyone got any questions?
So Mahesh, what if a dependency has multiple constructors, like with parameters and all? Which one will be
You see, in
loaded?
this case, as of now, I'll talk about it. Basically, we have the concept of injection types. Okay, that is the next thing we'll discuss. So, but as of now, here in this case, it only calls default constructor. Okay, you need to have a default constructor. It's mandatory. We can make the container to call a parameterized constructor. That is also possible. We'll see. Okay. Okay. Still, any questions? Okay, good. Now let's talk about dependency injection types. Okay, so this is specially specific to XML based configurations only. Okay, yes, dependency injection types. So what does that mean? Let's see. Types of dependency injection. Okay, let me just open this drive. So you'll find that here we have two different types of dependency injection. One is setter injection, and the other one is constructor injection. Setter injection and constructor injection. That's it. I have to clean my machine. It has become very slow. Yeah, you see, the dependency injection here in XML-based configurations is classified into two types, namely setter injection and constructor injection. So, setter-based dependency injection, DI means dependency injection here, is accomplished by container calling setter methods on your beans. So, the container will call setter method on your beans. So, in setter injection, the instance is injected using setter method. That bean instance, okay, the bean instance is injected using dependency bean instance is injected using setter method. I can say just like in setter injection, the dependency bean in bean instance is injected using setter method. Okay, so by calling the setter method, the container will inject the dependency. That is what it does. So that's the reason why I was asking you people to add a setter method for the dependency property. You see, in this case, in the product service here, we have this property, product repository, which represents the dependency, right? It represents the property, the dependency here, right? So for this property, we have added a setter method. Now the container, how it supplies the dependency by calling the setter method, it will pass that the dependency bean reference, which is in turn assigned to that property product repository here. Yes, it is in turn assigned to that property product repository. Yes, that is what happens. Okay, fine. For suppose, what if there is no setter method? Then what? So it's going to be an error. Okay, definitely it is going to be an error. Yes. Let's see. I'll run this code. What it says. So this is the highlighted line. Just read this statement. It says invalid property product repository. Yes. It says the bean property product repository is not writable or has an invalid method. It's not writable, or it says it has an invalid method, invalid setter method. Yeah, actually we don't have that setter method, right? That's the problem here. Yes. Okay. So this is what happens. This is setter-based injection. So through the setter method, container is applying the dependency or injecting the dependency. Next, we have constructor injection. So in case of constructor injection, you see the name itself, it suggests the container will supply the dependency bean reference using the constructor. So that bean, the dependency is resolved or it is solved using constructor. Okay, that is the dependent object is passed as a parameter in the dependent class constructor. Oh, sorry, not dependent object. It should be dependency bean reference. You see, bean reference. Bean means here we are referring to the object itself. You know that. Yes. Here, that dependency bean reference is passed as a parameter in the dependencies dependent class constructor. Yes, that is how it is passed through the constructor. Now let's see. So in this case here, in the product service, now you need to add a constructor appropriately. Now we have this property, product repository. Into this property, that bean reference, dependency bean reference have to be assigned. So add a parameterized constructor which takes that high product repository type reference as input. Okay, yes. I'm adding a constructor here which takes that product repository reference. Now we have a parameterized constructor, if you can check this. Yes, which takes the dependency bean reference. That is a parameter type here. Okay, here, but we need to ask the container to inject that dependency through the constructor. How will we ask the container to do that? You see, in the product service, now we have to just comment this property element. So whenever we use property element, you see the container will inject the dependencies in setter. Okay, yes. If you use property element, the container will inject the dependency through setter method. Yes, that is what it does. It is setter injection. Now let's ask the container to use the constructor. Yes. Constructor arc reference equal to product service. Sorry, product repository, let's say. So I want the container to inject that product repository bean to the dependency. Yes. You see, this time the container will call the constructor and it will pass this product repository bean reference as input. The container will call the constructor of this product service and it will pass that product repository bean reference. Yes. Okay, so let's run this code. So this time it should work fine without any issues. You see, we got this. So this is constructor injection. If you have two parameters for the constructor, then you have to pass two dependencies. Then you need to add one more constructor arg element. Okay, you can do this. Let's say we have another bean whose dependency has to be injected here. Let's say product repository 1. So that means here it indicates that the container will call a constructor with two parameters. In the first constructor arg reference, whatever you have configured, it will be passed to the first parameter, and the second constructor arg configuration, the reference will be passed onto the second parameter. That's it. In that order, the parameters will be passed in that order itself. Yes. Okay. So is it clear for you people, all of you? Any questions? Okay, good. Now, which one do you think is better, the constructor injection or the setter injection? Which type of injection is better? Constructor one. Okay. Why so? Yes. So, can you people justify why you're saying setter injection is better or constructor injection is better? On what basis?
Mahesh, in case of multiple dependencies in setter injection, it will be easy if you want to select only one or two. In case of constructor, I guess we have to, even though if we not needed of the dependency, we have to add that.
Yeah. So you see, setter injection is of course flexible. That's right. Compared to constructor injection. For suppose, imagine I have 10 dependencies for a bean. Yes, you'll have it found. If a bean has got 5 or 10 dependencies, just imagine the constructors, the parameters of that constructor. So how many parameters you'll have? If you have 5 dependencies, 5 parameters. If you have 10 dependencies, 10 parameters. So, and also you see, you have to make sure that you definitely supply some value, right? At least null. So that is what happens with constructor injection. Okay, yes, setter-based injection would be better in this case. Yeah. So setter-based injection is flexible. Fine. This is about injection types. Next, I have a question for you people. All of you, think about it carefully and tell me. Okay. You see, now we have two product repositories. One is product repository and the other one is product repository hib. And we are deciding which repository should be used by the container, right? So let's go back to that setter-based injection here. I'll use setter-based injection. Now if you can check this product service, so we are explicitly specifying which bean which dependency bean the service class is supposed to use, right? So here we have specified the reference as product repository. So the service will use this product repository bean itself. So if we specify product repository hib reference, it will use this product repository hib bean itself. So we are explicitly specifying which bean we want the container to use. So the thing is here, I don't want the container to, sorry, I want the bean to use a particular dependency on the fly based on its requirement. I want the container to use the bean dependency based on its requirement. Okay. Dynamically, it should choose a dependency, which one it wants to use. It should be able to dynamically choose that dependency. Okay. The bean here, the product dependent bean, product service bean, should be able to dynamically choose a bean dependency. So if it wants, it should be able to use the product repository bean, or it should be able to use product repository hib bean. So dynamically, it should be able to choose the dependency here. You got the requirement, all of you. Yes. Think about it and tell me the solution for this. Oh, no. Yes, think. But first of all, is the requirement clear, all of you? Hope everyone got it. Yes. The product service bean, should be able to dynamically fetch a bean reference based on its requirement. Okay, in this case, we have to make, if you have such requirement, okay, where the product service bean means the bean is supposed to choose the dependency based on its requirement dynamically. It has to uh, use a particular bean. So what you will do in that case, you know, in that case here we can make this bean context aware. We can make this bean context aware. Yes, by implementing an interface. Just a second. So we have an interface which helps us to make the bean aware of its context. Okay, how? Using this interface called as application context aware. Application context aware. By the way, so what do we mean by application context here? Yes, when I say application context, what does that mean? The container. Yes. So the application context means your container itself. So we can make this bean context aware. Yes. How to make the bean context aware this way? By implementing this interface. Now here in this interface we got a method which we need to override. Let's do that. What is it? Set application context. So this method set application context, it is a callback method. That means we won't call this method. The container will call this method. Okay. So basically you can think of it as a callback method. So we are not going to call this method. So the container will call this method. And what it does, it will pass that application context object reference here. It will pass the application context object reference. Okay. So that means that container, that application context, it represents that container, right? It's a handle for your container. So this bean will get that reference, application context bean reference. Yes, this bean will get that application context reference here. Yes. So you can take that application context reference and store it in a variable. So just store it in a variable. Say I'm declaring a variable, and to this variable application context, I will assign that reference. Now I can say that this bean is context aware. Now this bean can decide, and it can use this application context to get the bean reference which it needs. This bean can get the reference which it needs. Which bean reference it needs, it can get that bean reference. How it can get that bean reference here? Yes, can you people tell me how it can get that bean reference? You got the point? So you have a method. How do we ask the container to provide a particular bean reference? How do we ask the container to provide a particular bean reference? We saw that.
Get bin.
Get bean. That's right. So here you see application context dot. Yes, in this method I'll write so this in the process order method. Say I'll write this code get bean. I mean, let's say dynamically based on the requirement, based on a condition, it needs to get a bean reference. Let's say here I'll get that product repository hib bean reference. Okay, and I'll store it in that variable. Just I'm showing you people how to do this, so, but this may not be the right place to do this. So you can write it on top. Yes, get bean, and you can specify that bean class name also to avoid casting and all. Yes. So now this container itself, you see, it can get that bean reference. Sorry, this bean itself will get the dependency which it needs. Now let's run this code. So it is supposed to use that product repository hib now. Oops, we got some error. Let's just see. Product service defined. Oh, sorry. So I've added that setter method, right? I've commented the setter method. So now the container will try to inject the dependency in the setter method. I've commented it. Remove it. So container is injecting it. Again, we are overriding that bean reference, dependency bean reference with this bean reference here. That is what we are doing. See, this time the container will inject product repository hib. I mean, we are asking the container to provide this product repository hib page. So this way, you see, it is possible for a bean can also ask the container to provide a particular bean reference which it needs. Okay, dynamically based on the requirement, it can ask the container to provide a bean reference. So that is the advantage of making the bean context aware. Okay, now this bean is aware of the context. I can say it is aware of application context. So is this clear, all of you? How to make a bean context aware? And why do we need to do that? Why to make the bean context aware? Yes. Okay. Now let's move on. We'll talk about bean scope. Okay. We'll talk about bean scope. So I'll just comment this code. Just use it as a reference. That's it. You see, I'm commenting this code. So what is bean scope? Let's see. Mm, First, I'll talk about bean scope, then I'll talk about auto wiring. Yeah. So bean scope is all about how the container creates actual instances of the class defined with the bean definition. Yes, how it creates the instances, how the container creates the instances of a particular bean. How many bean instances it creates. Yes. You'll find that we have different types of bean scopes like singleton, prototype, session, and request. So let's start with singleton. This is the default bean scope, I can say, for the container. This is a default bean scope here. Yes. In case of singleton, what happens, you see, one instance of a bean is created and it is used for the entire application. Okay. One instance of the bean is created for the entire application. Yes. A single bean instance is created and the same bean instance will be used throughout the application here. The same bean reference is used throughout the application. Yes. So basically, it is a design pattern name, but here it is scope name as well. Okay. Singleton design pattern means for a an object, if it is singleton, that means only single instance of that particular bean will be available. Yes, there will be only one single bean instance. There will be just one single bean instance here throughout the application. So we can define a class which implements that singleton pattern. If you define a class which is based on the singleton pattern, then you can create only one instance for that particular class. Okay. So based on that pattern, you have a scope here. So that pattern name is used, but our beans are not singleton. Yes. So yeah, what happens? Bean scope. When I say scope, what did I say? It's all about the container, how it manages the instances of a particular bean. So we have a bean definition here. For example, we see we have account DO. Uh, just a second. Yeah, you see, this is how. Let's say you have a bean called as account DO. How will you configure the scope of the bean as singleton? We have to use this annotation. Just use this annotation. What is it? Sorry, not annotation. In case of XML based configurations, you'll use scope attribute. You see, in the bean element itself, you'll find a scope attribute. In the bean element itself, you'll find a scope attribute here. Okay, yes. So that scope attribute value should be singleton. In case of annotations based configurations, you will find that you'll use this annotation @scope. You'll use this annotation @scope, and you see that scope value will be singleton. But actually, you know what? We don't have to explicitly configure the beans as singleton. By default, a bean scope is singleton itself. By default, the bean scope is singleton itself here. Yes. Okay. You know, now there will be just one instance of that particular bean. Just check this. I'm sorry whether the text is smaller. Okay, don't worry. Let's go through this example now. Here, our product service bean is also by default configured as singleton itself. So now here, let's do one thing. You see, we are requesting the container to provide a bean reference, right? Now what the container does, uh, it returns that bean reference in it, alright? So first of all, it will check whether that bean instance is available, whether it has previously instantiated the bean. Okay, so if the container finds that it has already instantiated this bean, then it returns that bean reference which is available. Else, it will create a new bean instance, I can say. And so what it does, it creates a new bean instance. Yes, and returns that bean instance. Once it creates a bean instance for this particular bean, it won't instantiate the bean again. Okay, it won't instantiate the bean again. Yes. Here, you see, now we'll ask the container to provide the bean reference twice, 2 times, right? So I'm asking the container to provide the bean reference twice here, 2 times. So what happens? In this case, the container will create how many bean instances? What do people think? The container, it creates how many bean instances? One or two? Yeah. So actually just now as I told you people, the container follows singleton pattern. So it just creates only a single bean instance. The container just creates a single bean instance, and what it does here, it will use that same bean reference for, it will return the same bean reference no matter how many times you ask the container to provide bean reference. It will return the same bean instance every time. Okay, every time the container will return the same bean instance here now. Yes. So how do I check whether the container has provided the same bean reference or a different bean reference? You see, you can compare the references. Product service 1 double equal to product service 2. So what it should return here, true or false, according to the discussion now? Should it return true or false here? What do people think? It should return true because you'll get the same bean reference type. The container won't create multiple bean instances of this type. Container won't create multiple bean instances of this type. You just have one single bean instance and it returns the same bean reference. So both the bean references have to be same here. So it should return true. Yes. So let's run this code. See, you got true. So why the container follows singleton scope, bean scope strategy by default? Why it creates only a single bean instance? What could be the reason? What do you people think? Anukul. Yeah. So just you see, this is like optimizing the memory usage and by creating less number of beans, right? Yeah. You know, but for all the requirements, this strategy may not be useful. Okay. Yes. So in some cases, yes, you may create you may need only one bean instance of that particular type, but not we can't use this strategy in all cases. So in what cases? Can you people give me one example where we can use the singleton strategy? Yes, one example where we can use the singleton strategy.
Application context should be only single.
Application context, okay, yeah. In Hibernate, we saw one example. Your session factory bean, yes, that's right. So this way, in some cases, you see, session factory bean should be only there should be only one instance of the session factory bean. Yeah. So this way, in some requirements, you need only one instance of a particular bean. Yes. Let's say I want multiple instances of the bean. I don't want the container to follow the singleton strategy here. So then what you will do? Yes. I don't want the container to follow singleton strategy. In that case, you know, you can go for prototype scope. Yes, we have prototype. So what happens in case of prototype? See, one instance of a bean is created every time the bean is injected into or retrieved from the application context. Yes. So whenever we ask the container or application context to provide a particular bean reference, it creates an instance. Definitely, it creates an instance of that. So that is how it works. Okay. So this is prototype. So you can just easily change this bean scope to prototype here. So what you will do, go to this application context, the product service. By default, it is singleton, as I told you people. So you have scope attribute. Just specify the scope as prototype. That's it. You have content assist. You don't have to type everything. Okay. Yes. Uh, this is prototype. So next we have requests and session scopes also. Basically, they are valid in a web application. Context not here. So when I say request scope, you'll find that every time every time a client places a request, so for each request, a bean instance is created. Okay, for each request, client's request, a bean instance is created. That is request scope. Yes, for each client's request, a bean instance is created. If the bean scope is request. Yeah. See, in a web application, one instance of a bean is created for each client's request. Next, session. You'll have sessions in the web applications. For each session, it creates an instance if it is session scope. Okay, if the bean scope is session, for each session, it is also related to your web applications. So for a session, you'll find that a bean instance is created here. Yes. So all the beans which are involved in processing, which are involved in a particular session, see, for that particular session, a bean instance is created. Yes. So once the session is closed, even this beans will be destroyed. Yeah. So this is about the bean scope. Yeah. So we have to talk about auto wiring, but I'll do it in the next session. Okay. So I'll stop it here today. So today I'll upload this records, yesterday's record also, and also I'll add that code to the Dropbox folder also. Okay. Yes. Fine. So let's meet tomorrow for the spring session and we'll continue discussion. Thank you all. Bye bye.